coaches. Today, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, the CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planned all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, and here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the new head coach at Friends University, Terry Harrison. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Excited for in our house, July 4th, the holiday is also my wife's birthday, so it's a big weekend in our house.
Well, that usually sets precedent. My wife's birthday is 2 days after Christmas, and I know exactly what you mean. Before we get started with anything, the Flexbone or anything else, I mean, how did you end up becoming the head football coach at Friends University?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a crazy process and not something I ever, dreamed of or anything like that. But your life takes its own path and winds its way around. But long story short, I grew up in East Texas and ended up coming up into Kansas and playing small college football here at a place called Sterling College, which is kind of a small town in the middle of nowhere. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life, right? But went there, met my wife. Got into high school coaching. So I knew as a player in high school that I wanted to be a high school football coach. So anyway, was teaching PE and coaching high school football at Valley Center High School, which is now 5 minutes north of Wichita. Coached high school football there and worked my way up from assistant running back coach to offensive line coach. Ended up being a defensive coordinator through 3 different head coaches there, and we were never really great, but just it's a great community and a great school. My kids actually still go to school there, and my wife teaches there. But anyway, knew I wanted to be a head football coach, and so I kind of got out in the Kansas communities and meet with people that I really respected and had good reputations, and a long way around ended up moving over to Wichita Heights High School as a defensive coordinator and working with Rick Wheeler, who I still consider to be the best football coach I've ever met or ever been around or ever seen on the field or anything like that. But I was the defensive coordinator. Heights had just played in 3 state championships, and so the defensive coordinator left to become a head coach, and I kind of slid into that position. And just loved every minute working with Coach Wheeler. He was the athletic director, and I ran the weight room, and our offices right beside each other. And so man, if I had never done that, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. And just having a mentor like that getting to see him work every day and then just being able to peek in and out of his office and throw stuff at him. Anyway, was defensive coordinator for 1 year. We actually lived like 3 houses down from each other. And anyway, he decided to step down after that year and only be the athletic director. And I became the head football coach. And so he stayed on. And so again, what a great opportunity there at Heights High School. Had my mentor as the athletic director there, and I was the head football coach and stayed there and, really loved my time there. Thought that would be a job I'd have forever. And just over the course of time, won a bunch of games. I think we were 38-16 at the varsity level and, won a bunch of, JV and freshman games as well. But I go to church with the AD at Bethel College, and just when they had an opening, he reached out to me and asked me to be the head football coach at Bethel College. And I told him absolutely not, but I'd help him find the right guy. And so anyway, went up to Bethel College and was kind of talking with him through things. And, little did I know they didn't offer me that job while I was there. And just, his challenge to me at that time was, how many guys get to run Flexbone at the college level, right? And we all know it's a pretty rare thing. And so Bethel had been probably the worst college football team in all of college football, and, in the last 100 years. And so kind of went there not necessarily knowing we'd be any good or not knowing anything about recruiting, and ended up being really good and won back-to-back conference championships there. Through the COVID year, we won a conference championship, played in a playoff game. I think we played in 4 different states, which was really cool. And anyway, Friends, though, here in Wichita, which is, again, closest university to my home, has always been the job in the conference that people thought, how are they not the best school in the conference. And it's kind of been this little side conversation among coaches in the conference, like, man, if anybody good gets that fringe job, or, that fringe job, it's always been something people have talked about. And even on the outside, something I knew if I ever had that opportunity, not knowing it ever come across, even when I was at Heights High School, everybody's like friends. And so anyway, after winning a couple of conference championships, their athletic director and through friends of friends reached out to me. And I ended up coming down and meeting with them, and meeting with the president of the college, meeting with the athletic director, obviously, and just knew that this was where I needed to be. And so right after the weekend after our conference champion, the weekend after our season ended this last fall, I met with the players. So we played on a Saturday. I met with the players on a Sunday and let them know that I was leaving Bethel and, coming to Friends University, and then, came out here. And so that, that Bethel, let those guys know we were leaving, which was probably the hardest conversation I've ever had in my life, to be honest with you. And then that, an hour later, I was meeting with the Friends players, and our entire full-time staff came as well. And now we hit the road and been recruiting and had spring ball, and just, excited about Friends. It is a special, special place. And, I think you and I talked, you're in Ohio, right? And people just, until you're out here and see it in person. We hosted a big clinic that had 120 people, 120 coaches out here, and man, they were just blown away because, when you just see something on Twitter or social media, it's hard to grasp it until you see it in person. But it really is a special place right in downtown Wichita. And, we're excited to be here, and we're going to see if we can build this thing into something truly special.
Now, I mean, there's several ways we want to take this when we hit a lot of topics, but I mean, the first thing I'd like to ask, especially my Flexbone guys, is why the Flexbone? Why is that? I mean, it's a very good offense. I mean, you look at any of you can easily find Flexbone guys. I'll phrase it that way, because you just look at stats and who are they usually the top 3 to 4 rushing teams, and usually they're all successful too. Like, it's very hard to find a college Flexbone team that isn't a winning program. So why do you guys run the Flexbone? Why is that an offense you were pulled towards both at the high school and college level?
Well, first, we the cool part of Bell's, shameless plug, we're the number 1 rush team in the country at any level. People always include NCAA schools, but they never throw that NEI on there. But we ran for 410 yards a game last year at Bethel. Maybe one of the best rushing seasons in the last 20 years of any college football team. And so we've gotten really good at that. And, the other thing, Flexbone it's a weird deal. We talk about a lot. It's kind of funny. Like, what is the Flexbone equip? Like, there's nothing like it in any sport. With the closest thing I can think is maybe like a knuckleball pitcher in Major League Baseball. You don't see a ton of them, but when you do, they win games. But, they just kind of this, like a vagabond guy who's a knuckleballer, right? And Flexbone's a little bit that way. It's kind of an interesting thing of how and why, it's not as popular at the Division I level. Who knows? There's probably plenty of answers to that. But for me, what's crazy is we've been the number 1 scoring team in our conference. So in conference play in the last 2 years, we've scored more points than anyone in our conference, somewhere in the mid 40 points per game. I don't know the exact number, 45, 46 points a game. But what's funny is you can be, so the number 2 scoring team in our conference is like this spread team, and people think they're this, they are good coaches, by the way. So, but they have the perception of this great offensive coaching and offensive scoring system, and we've scored more points than them. But it's funny how you get the negative connotation sometimes you can get with Flexbone is, whatever it might be, 3 yards in cloud of dust, milk the clock. But hey, man, we're trying to score, and that's what we do, and we've done it at a really high level. But sometimes being a Flexbone school, like, it's just really funny. We've scored more points than anyone, but you sometimes outside of the Flexbone community, you don't get recognized for that. So that's been an interesting thing. But having said that, why Flexbone? So I was a spread quarterback. Got moved to Flexbone tight end my senior year of college, and with the same exact players, we went from 0-10 to I think 5-5 or 4. I can't remember. It was right around 500. But I moved from quarterback to tight end, so I was basically an offensive tackle with an eligible number, and just fell in love with it at that time. With the rules were very different at that time, so the below the waist blocking was even more physical and violent, and so I loved doing that. It was awesome for me, and then I ended up coaching offensive line in it, and it's just, for whatever reason, look, man, the Flexbone ain't for everybody. And sometimes people go on these crusades, and it's like they pick their Division I school and they go on this Twitter, this school, Vanderbilt, KU, they need to run Flexbone. Look, man, it ain't for everybody, and I'm not that guy, but it is for me. It fits my eye, it fits my personality. I don't know. It's what intrigues me. It's what I get excited about. Like if I wasn't coaching Flexbone, I just wouldn't be coaching football, to be honest with you. I love it, but I do understand it's not for everybody. So anyway, having said that's why I love it. I think it's the greatest offense in football. I think it's the hardest to defend. As a former D coordinator, I know how it is. It's one of those deals. Every D coordinator says they hate to defend it. They don't want to prepare for it. But 99% of offensive coordinators run the spread and are playing to the defensive strengths at some level. So what people want to see. And so, that's kind of our deal, but I absolutely love it. I think it's, just the inherent team aspect of it. You never know, one night it might be the left slot time to run for 200 yards. And the next Saturday, it might be the right slots. And then the next Saturday it might be the quarterback, but it's just having to block for everybody has to block for each other and that unselfishness that it requires. And then obviously the way we've included the receivers in our passing game has been super cool. And we're excited about that to add that next dimension of throwing the football, which everybody's chasing. But I really do think we're as unique as anyone running this offense, and our ability to do that and the way we're coaching it and kind of the resources we've sought out to make this an elite passing team. So, definitely excited about that. What's been funny is, even on our end, coming here to friends, the kids we played against each other and they kind of, they knew we ran this offense and, what does that mean? And having to meet the guys and teach it and then just watching their eyes kind of light up and get excited about it and the way we prepare kids. And, so it's been cool to see kids here kind of get, fully bought into running it as well. So, but that's why I like it, man. We've been winning, I think our track record is what it is, man. And we've won at the high school level, won at the college level now, and we're bringing it to Friends University and trying to replicate that here.
Now, when you started to install this and develop this offense, what resources did you pull from? I mean, obviously, the obvious ones are like Harding and the Division I level, but where were you, like when you were putting this together and as you've modified it over the years, where do you try to pull from and talk to? Obviously, you've spoken a little bit on it as well, but as you've built this offense, who do you kind of minds pick?
Yeah, well, luckily years ago, 2013 is when I first met Kenny Wheaton, and he's just a good friend and a great man, and his influence has been awesome. Kevin Chisholm, the offensive line coach at Harding, those guys have just been awesome guys, great resources, and we're all, at some level, we're kind of all in it together. We don't compete against each other, so we can share ideas and meet with each other. And so obviously the Harding guys, Rick Wheeler, who was at Heights, we were a Flexbone school at Heights High School. And so, the success we had there, a little bit of his influence. And then, our slot coach, who's our recruiting coordinator, actually played at Harding. His name's Eric Kelly. And so him as a resource as a player, having done it and then played at Harding. And then Jeremy Reed is our offensive coordinator who, he was a high school coach at UConn and, hosted this big option clinic that I went to every year. And then, during the COVID year, had the opportunity for him to join us full time on staff. And so, quite honestly, that's kind of our circle. It's a pretty tight circle, but I do think it's the guys that are doing it at the highest level. And if you look at, stats, I think you could argue that pretty easily, and so, man, we're just doing this thing, trying to build something we can all be proud of. But, I was a play caller. I've been the offensive line coach ever since I started, being a head coach. And so I do the offensive line with Coach Reed doing the quarterbacks and B-backs. And then we have a former Harding player who I think is the best slot coach in the country, at whatever, pick your Flexbone school. And so we're pretty fortunate to have a really good staff here who's all in this thing together. And, having Kenny as a resource and Kevin. And then, we had Mike Seawalk came out to one of our 2 clinics ago and he spoke. So getting to pick Seawalk's brain now that he's retired, he's had some influence. And so just, guys like that. And then, we recently got into, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of Dub Maddox, who's a big, we've really been bouncing a lot of stuff off of him. And we've really, he's a phenomenal coach. In no way are we reinventing what he's doing in the R4 world, but we are including the R4, the communication with our quarterback play and our receivers. And that's where we think we've made the biggest jump. So, if you can think for guys that are Flexbone guys or football guys out there, the way we've ran the football and the Kenny Wheaton influence in the running game, and now we have the Dub Maddox influence in the R4 world in the passing game and game planning game. And so it's been, we are truly excited to see what that might look like, here at Friends University.
Now, I mean, you've rebuilt. Well, you're trying to rebuild and get friends the potential that you see it in. You rebuilt Bethel. I mean, what is like when you enter a program for the first time? What is like your priority order? What are the things you kind of focus on first? Obviously, that really most of that's usually not scheme. That's fine, but what is your kind of priority list? Obviously, I think one of your priorities going to friends was bringing as many of your staff as humanly possible with you. But what is your kind of priority list? How do you prioritize? Okay, this is where we're going to start.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And man, it's funny. Like I'm just I grew up in a trailer park in East Texas. I'm not that smart, I don't think, but I think it comes down to football. And in my experiences, how you treat people. We obviously culture is a big deal, and people talk about it a lot in a good way. Like it can get a little overused probably, but that's not bad. But for us, it was number one. What you mentioned was getting our full time staff here, right? So had our full time staff not been able to come, we would have never left Bethel because it is a good school and we had awesome players there. But once we got here, it was simply we have nothing to sell, and so in recruiting, you hear about sales and this, and then I've heard so many guys think, well, we run the Flexbone, so we have to come in and sell these kids on why we do it. And we didn't do that. I have nothing to sell to anyone. We've been very good and we do a lot of cool things. But more than that, it was just getting in with the players. And so what I did here, which which I didn't do at Bethel necessarily just because it was a little bit of a different circumstance. I came in and just watched them. So we have a strength conditioning coordinator here, obviously, who does a great job, and he's got a staff and everything. And so we just came in the weight room, and I did not come in and tell the strength coach what to do. I did not come in and do anything. I simply came in and watched these young men lift together, and I watched them interact with each other, and was just taking mental notes and sometimes notes on paper of what we saw. And it was probably I'm glad I did that. I'd never done that before. At Bethel, it was, hey, I showed up and this is what we're doing and this is how we do it, right? Which ended up being successful. But we had some issues come up there, in the first couple of months of being there that we just didn't know existed. And we had to learn that the hard way. Whereas here, when I just came in and observed, got to see some things, right? And then we got to teach our guys like, hey, this is what we saw in the weight room today. Winners don't do that. Champions don't do that. And then you can address those things as they came. And I thought that was, that was super cool. And we didn't tell them anything. We just observed and high-fived kids and kind of did a little evaluation, I guess, of who the leaders were, who had influence, who didn't, maybe who had that weird look like they're not all in type of deal. And then we could have some individual conversations after that. And it was really, really happy about that. What's cool is the kids at Friends were so hungry. Friends hadn't had a winning season in 8 years, I think. It was, they really struggled the last 2 years here. I mean, it was big time on the field and off the field struggles, to say the least. And so these kids were hungry. So the kids, you can imagine, right? Like any program, the kids that have stayed here love it. They love Friends. They love football. And so they were super hungry. But we were able to kind of, hey, slow down, which was awesome. And then when we finally did take over and say, hey, this is how we lift. This is how we interact with each other. And then we started doing some meetings to teach scheme. I think it was more powerful because we kind of knew where the flaws might have been, which we wouldn't have known otherwise. And so that was really cool. And then, like I said, you can have sayings and you can have mottos, but I think team culture is how kids feel after you talk to them and how the kids feel when they're around each other. Whatever motto you want to use, any of that, that's what team culture is to me. And then it boils down to, do they trust you as a coach, and do they really believe you care about them? And that's what we do. I know it sounds, I don't know, it sounds like a super simple explanation, but that really is, who we are. Is like, we have some sayings and that's cool. We could change those tomorrow though, but how we treat kids is still going to be the same. And then proving that every day, right? Because every coach in America tells their team, hey, we're going to be a family and we're going to make sure we take care of you and all this, and we're going to take care of your bodies and we're going to do this or that. And then they don't live up to that. Right. And so what we do is, I'm just very honest with kids. Like, look, every coach says this, every coach says that, but we're going to prove it to you. And that's what we do every day. And retention has been really good. Like anything, there's transition, and there's some kids that needed to leave, and there's some kids that chose to leave. But that's been pretty small here at Friends, because the kids, I think, how we make them feel, and we've proven every day that, we're going to take care of them, and, we're going to develop them. And so that's been our focus, and it's went really well. And our kids show up here now in about 15 days. And so we're excited to build on what we had this spring.
Now, you mentioned coaching offensive line there. Where do you start in the Flexbone when you're coaching your offense, especially at new school? Where is your kind of starting point, drill wise, communication wise, foundationally wise?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we try to adapt and fit wherever we're at. Here, Friends was a spread school. No kid had been in a 3-point stance, or at least not a ton. And so, quite honestly, college is nice because our kids, we do have some group time we can do with kids in the spring prior to spring ball. And we really did. We introduced, we did some, I forget what we call them now, but essentially we had kids come out in groups to the field. Well, we did classroom first. We taught them who to block, right? Schemes. And they were learning who to block and what their assignments are and what their rules are in a meeting room. Right. And we did the entire offense together. So O-line, we're hearing quarterback stuff, quarterback, we're hearing O-line stuff. We think that's pretty powerful when you teach concepts, and Coach Reed did a great job of that. It's probably the most in-depth we've ever been at that, as far as when we've taken over somewhere. I think our kids at Bethel ended up understanding all the concepts really well. We tried to do that on the front end here at Friends and teach the concepts and the whys, which is really cool. But then, so they've seen all the video of the drills. Before we did one drill with the players, they saw every video, they saw every drill technique and rule on video. And then we went out and, we really just broke it down, simply getting in a stance. What is a great stance? And, which sounds so, guys, it's funny to think about that, where we had been for 4 years, but here, when they'd only been in a 2-point stance, that's pretty, that's a different deal. So getting them comfortable in a stance, and then doing board drills. Board drills for us is footwork. It's not like hitting each other. Footwork and ball get off. So there's a lot of different ways to do technique, but I think you can't, for my personal, my flavor of offensive line is nothing replaces ball get off. And we're talking those sprinting off the ball, those first 2 steps. So that's been our big focus here at Friends. That's going to be my focus this fall, is all about, how you start and how you finish, right? So all the stuff in between, we can fix where your hands are, your steps. But in the end, if you're not coming off the ball like you really mean it, you're going to struggle. And so for me, that's what it's boiled down, is ball get off. And so that's where we started with our guys. So they know who to block in the meeting rooms and, on the scheme side, but then it really is how you start that. And that's all about ball get off. And that's been our focus. And they did we had 16, spring ball, we had 16 practices, and man, they did awesome, man. By the time we had the big, we've always hosted the National Option Clinic. That's how I met Jeremy Reed a long time ago. And then since he came on staff, we actually host it. And by the time those coaches showed up here on practice 16, it looked like a whole different team, because our kids had never done it, and yeah. We were a little nervous at first, like, man, we're hosting 120 coaches on our campus and these kids had never done it, but our kids did a great job, and they looked pretty polished, all things considered. And so building on that is going to be awesome. And our O-line, the O-linemen here, they've embraced going forward instead of kick stepping all the time. And I think as an O-lineman, there's a little bit of freedom in that, right? We're going to deliver the blow instead of take it. So that's been cool.
Now, you mentioned scheme a little bit there. How much, from a scheme perspective, do you start severely simpler instead of trying to put the whole thing on? Because again, they've just run spread the past couple of years, or do you just treat like normal and like go, or like really? Because at Bethel, how much did you progress over those 3 years at the same time?
Well, the thing is that in these Flexbone guys, we threw I guess let me start the part. We ended up doing everything we did at Bethel. So our kids at Friends they did everything. So by the 16th practice, they were doing everything we would have done at Bethel. So if that, to answer your question. But no, we run, what you do is, in my opinion, we run every scheme, and then you can work back on some details of things. And then we focus so much on little details, because that is what makes the difference, and what probably makes us, or we hope at least, one of the best teams in the country, if not the best staff in the country doing this. That's our goal, right? Whether we are or not, that's arguable, but we really want to be that. So then, I guess we kind of did it maybe in a little bit slower chunks than we would have done it. Like if we had been here for 4 years, you kind of hit the ground running. So instead of maybe putting something in a 3 practice set, we might have spread it out over 6, but the end result was still the same. By practice 16, we had everything in. And so that was cool. And we just like to throw the ball. Kids like throwing and catching. And so we devote more time to that than other schools do that run this stuff. And so that was fun to do. And, I've been working hard on teaching pass pro better, because that's, when you're committed to throwing the ball a little bit, that's, as a Flexbone, you watch some Flexbone teams and it looks almost embarrassing when they try to pass pro, or throw the ball. And it's funny because it's true, right? And so that's my hope. Like, don't be the worst pass protection guy in the world. And so that's what we worked hard on, is some details of pass pro. And I got to kind of, for lack of better terms, nerd out on that this spring with our guys. And the cool part was, right, it's one of the benefits of when you inherit a spread team. These kids had been doing some pass pro. So quite honestly, I learned a little bit of details from them that they had learned previously, and then just added my own little, flair. And, because we do see it's not the same when you're 2-point stance, kick stepping all the time, and vertical setting and horizontal stepping, as opposed, when we're in our stance, and the way defenders just play us a little different. So to get the pass, to get in position to pass pro, the setup's a little different, but the end result's still the same. And so, yeah, so we threw, I guess, that was a long answer. We threw everything at them, and they did a great job. And quite honestly, by practice 16, we could have played a game. No different with everything in that we would have had at, whether I was at Heights High School or Coach Reed at UConn, or us at Bethel, or, now at Friends. And so the kids did just an amazing job of that.
Now, from an install progression standpoint, what is your typical install progression from a play standpoint wise kind of look like? Everybody's different on what they start with. Some start with outside veer, some start with inside veer, some start with midline. What is your kind of typical install progression kind of look like?
We start with inside veer. We think that's the greatest play in football. I think we ran, it was crazy. Over 50% of our offense was inside veer and zone dive last year, which is pretty unique. There's not a lot of guys that are running inside veer as much as people think, at the college level. But we start with inside veer, and then we build off of that. There's some unique timing things with inside veer you have to really work on, because you want that thing hitting so hard downhill. And it's hard to get kids to do that right. You have to really commit to being a great inside veer team. And at least if you at the details of it, right? Anybody can run inside veer, but to be really what we think elite at it, which we believe we were, that's where we started. And then, we build everything off of that. So every play and every scheme and every tag, all that stuff stems from inside veer. And then, how the defense reacts to that. And so it really is a system. Like I said, there's so many great systems out there of, spread teams are generally built off inside zone, right? And they build everything off of that. And then they start adapting their scheme to that. And there's so many great schools that are doing that. And, we're no different. We're actually the exact same. And any great system has a base. And for us, like you mentioned, that's inside veer, and we go from there. And so that's where we start. And that's what we spend. We probably spend the most time on that. And, like I said, it's a work in progress. It takes patience, and sometimes you gotta just scratch a practice up and know you're gonna have to get on film and fix it the next day. And if you're willing to do that, inside veer pays off big time, and it has for us. And it really last year we were really good at it at Bethel, and so we want to build that up here at Friends.
Okay. Now, you mentioned details there. What detail, especially like as you watch other triple teams or high school teams that run the triple, what details or talking to coaches, what details you think they miss when they're installing inside veer or other option plays?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, inside veer, the thing, the most unique thing is it's actually a downhill play. When I played quarterback in high school, we ran a little bit inside veer, nothing like we do here, but it's the idea of pitching and floating and getting to the sideline, whereas really it's trying to get guys going downhill, and finding the right alley where that is, it's unique to your own school, but where you get downhill. And so the timing of the motion, so everything from the motion has to fit the quarterback's footwork, it has to fit the timing of the offensive line. And when your arc blocker, it's just a timing. It's a little bit like ballet, believe it or not. Is just it's choreographed, right? The timing of where all these things hit, because if one thing is off, if the arc block is off, if the quarterback's footwork is off, if the offensive line splits aren't correct, I mean, there's just so many things that affect it. And it's hard, it's hard as a staff, and you can't, the way we coach it, it ain't ever the kid's fault. It's always the coach. So we have no feelings, man. We come in here and, between Coach Reed, Coach Kelly, myself, and then we have a graduate assistant coming here to coach receivers who actually played for us at Bethel, who was a phenomenal spot for us. But we got to have no feelings to be like, hey, this is where the weak link is, and having to tweak it and adjust it. And so that's why, to be really good at veer, that's why, is because it takes so much to be great at it, and you can't have feelings on whose kids are messing up. You just got to go attack it and fix it. And so for us, that's fun. It's not, we don't have feelings as far as whose kids may need a little more work. We think that's fun to get it working correctly. And we've taught our our players at Friends that what it takes to be great at running inside veer. And so, then when you're coaching these kids up, it's not attacking them, right? They are embracing the the critiquing and man, we grade our kids really hard every day, and we watch film with them, and they just done an awesome job of embracing what they've been, what they've struggled with. And I think what's cool, it kind of ties back to the culture piece. They know, like, hey, this is a me issue. Like, if our offensive line aren't doing things right, that's a Coach Harrison problem, right? As long as those guys are going hard and playing extremely hard. And it's been cool to be at a new school where, maybe the culture previously, and this can happen anywhere, but where maybe the previous staff was more negative and kid blamers, to come here and be a part of our staff, which we never blame kids. It is always, hey, this is a coaching problem. And so I think it's been cool to watch our kids embrace that. And I think it makes kids want to play harder for you. And, that's the coaches we want to be, and the team culture we want to have. And that's been really cool. And, getting your guys to do practice at full speed. I think I saw you had Tony Holler on here.
Yes, sir.
Big time. We fully embrace his philosophy, fully, the best we can, right? He's so smart, sometimes he says stuff, but we do our best to embrace that as much as possible, right? I can't say 100% because I'm not an expert on it, but we do the whole no sweat thing, and we try to limit how much we have kids running mindlessly. We don't do team conditioning, any of that stuff. So getting your kids, I guess that was a long way around, to get kids to play full speed, right? So our slots know, hey, we're running inside veer, we need a full speed rep, because we're not going to run gassers, we're not going to kill your legs. So to get the exact timing, you have to have 100% rep from your backside slot, 100% rep from your front side slot. And our kids know that is their conditioning, and we're not going to have them running a bit, they're not trying to save themselves for anything, I guess is the point. And so that's been, super cool and fun. And so it was interesting to see had him as a guest, because we really do, man, we love that stuff. And it's been very impactful for our program, and we've seen the benefit of it.
Now, we'll come back to that here in a second. I want to hit my other question first. From a group and pod situation, what do you guys kind of focus on drill wise? Is there anything you do differently, or that sets you out, or is there any one drill that you're kind of like, hey, this is kind of what we have to get done because it helps inside veer or so and so?
Yeah, half line is big for inside veer. That's a staple among most option schools and Flexbone schools, especially guys that know Kenny and our staff. So half line is where we really get good veer reps in, and that's where you're not having your backside guard tackle. You're working center, frontside guard, frontside tackle. That's our big rep. Option drill is a big deal, and that's with your quarterbacks, center, slots, B-back, whatever you're calling, receivers, where you're working on timing with so your cones or your offensive lineman type of deal. But that's really where we really work hard on inside veer at those times. And then obviously offensive line are doing our own individual work. And so that's where we do that. Love, it kind of go in and out of the 3-on-3. So if you've seen pods, like 3-on-3 pod for Flexbone teams, and then your tackle slot pod, teams and programs have gone in and out of that, but we've just fully embraced that, man, that 3-on-3 segment. We try to really, when we work with high school staffs across the country, really try to stress, hey, 3-on-3 is a big deal. But it takes a high capacity for boredom, because you got to just do it and do it and do it. And it's the same thing over and over. So when you talk of details, how do you rep details? You can't chase schemes, and you can't chase plays. You have to really, like, we're going to get really good at this. And so that's where we love 3-on-3. That's my favorite drill personally. And then obviously our tackle slot pod has been phenomenal. And Coach Kelly generally runs that because he's a slot, and he really works our tackles during that time. And so that's been, phenomenal when you have a small staff, when you can pot it out like that. That's been good. And what we've probably done more now is trying to move, like we've included half line play action pass. And so now we actually throw the ball 20 minutes a day in group work, right? So most option schools, it's like you warm up, you throw a couple play action passes, and the rest is all run game. But we've actually, we commit 20 minutes a day, which in the Flexbone world is a big deal, to throwing the football. And we do that in the half line world, where we get to work every protection. And that's where we've really got to develop working on the details of pass pro. And that's new to us, doing it that way. And so we hope, the receivers here have been awesome. We actually inherited a great group of receivers and quarterbacks that we really like. And so, showing those guys, hey, when you start teaching this R4 world that you may be familiar with or people read about, man, it has been. So you go to a spread school and they're worried that this Flexbone staff comes in and like, what about throwing the ball? And then we get them on a whiteboard and start talking through our passing game and passing concepts and all the details of that to get on the field. And it's the highest. So every receiver we have in our program has said this is the highest level of passing game content, passing game schemes, passing game details that they've ever been a part of. And so that was a huge compliment to us. And that's kind of the deal, right? If, like we talked about, right? These guys go on Twitter crusades every time a Division I football job opens up and say they need to run Flexbone. Well, if you're going to walk into any job in the country, whether that's Fringe University, Wichita Heights High School, pick your school, and you're a Flexbone school, you're going to have to address that, right? Well, how are we going to throw the ball? And if you're a receiver, it's not, look, our receivers block their butt off, right? But spread receivers do the same thing, right? That's not unique to the Flexbone. Unfortunately, it gets kind of made out to be that way. How are you going to go into a room, and when you have these talented receivers who are good players that can help you win football games, how can you show them that, hey, this is what we do in the passing game? And that's been our commitment, right? And I think that's what probably makes us the most, of anything we do, that probably what makes us the most different, because we could go sit in a room right now. We're near K-State and we're near KU. We really believe we could go in a room right now and we could start talking passing game, and those receivers will be coached, hopefully, right? Coached at the highest level they've ever been coached in the passing game. And that's been our goal. And that's what we did here at Friends. And the receivers have loved that. And so we commit to that in our pods as well. So we have pods for running, pods for passing, and it's been, man, super cool. And so now we feel comfortable as a staff. We could go into any room in America, any wide receiver room in America, and we can get those receivers up on a whiteboard and they can learn from us. Pick, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, you pick it. What we hope is that we can teach those guys something in the passing game to where they know, hey, these guys do know their stuff when you start talking about putting the ball in the air outside of just our elite running game.
Now, I mean, you mentioned something there, the tackle slot pod. What does that actually look like in detail? Because that's one I've not had much guys mention about.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly, your tackle slot. So tackle here, slot, right? And we work anything from zone dives to veer arcs to veer loads, mid doubles. Anytime those two guys are working together, it's all work rocket toss, and it's making sure. What we do is we make sure their feet. So we're timing, are their feet matching, right? Do their feet match? And is all we talk about nerding out on little details, right? That's what we do there, right? We film everything. If you don't have a drone for your practices, buy one. Love drones. Biggest fan of drones. So we drone that, and whether it's an injured player or we do have some GAs. We actually just hired a GA who's going to be our drone guy, and so. That's how much we believe in it. We're committing an entire position to drone, right? That's how much powerful that is. And so we're, maybe one day we drone the 3-on-3, and the next time we do pods, we drone the tackle slot combo. And it is truly that. It is watching their feet, does it time correctly to then fit in with the scheme timeline. And so we don't run a ton of schemes like anybody good. We don't run a bunch of schemes. But man, when you start breaking down our schemes, does everything fit together? And so that's the puzzle pieces, right? This 3-on-3 period you have over here, this tackle slot thing, and that way when you put it together, does it all jive? And so that's truly what it is. It's just the tackles and the slots, and every scheme they would run, how that jives together. And it, you do, as a coach, do you hold a kid to a high standard, and do your kids embrace the details and of their steps matching and stuff like that?
No, perfect. Now you also mentioned feed the cats earlier. And again, you obviously said you're not a rocket scientist or PhD in it, but when did you discover it? And two, how have you begun to adapt it in a little bit more in detail to your program?
Yeah, so discovered, I mean, I don't know, but you know how it is. It's popular, right? I guess I don't know how popular it is, but at least on my Twitter feed, Twitter's like dumb and awesome. Like it's the stupidest thing in the world and the best thing in the world all at the same time. And so we're not on every social media, but we definitely, Twitter's a thing, right? And so just seeing that, and then, becoming a problem solver. So very fortunate at Friends, right? We have 2 full-time strength coaches, and we have 2 strength GAs, beautiful weight room that rivals Division I schools across the country. So here we have a strength coach who is phenomenal. I've actually known him a long time. He was a high school coach in Wichita, but he does a great job. So we don't have to worry about it. At Bethel, we had no strength coach, no GA, we worked out in the basement of an old dorm. We had 4 squat racks, 4 benches, and some machines. That's what we had at Bethel College. Okay. In a basement that was, that flooded every now and then. And so I was a strength guy and at the high school level, but when you get into the college game, when you start doing recruiting, all of the things, and not to make it sound harder than it is, but there just are some things. Recruiting's its own thing, right? And it's its own time-consuming thing. And so what happened was we have a small staff, right? We don't have the giant staff that these Division I schools have. And so what I felt like was happening was strength and conditioning. Honestly, it's really hard to develop players without a strength and conditioning coach, right? And so so we had that problem. And so I was into the Feed the Cat thing as far as researching it. And like, yes, I believe, obviously it's just common sense. That's what's crazy. Like people, I mean, it's like, the funny part is when you listen to Mr. Holler, Coach Holler, forgive me, speak, it's like, yeah, it's just, that makes sense. It's just like this, that makes sense. And so for me, when you find someone like that, who's passionate, who's obviously an expert at what he does, I'm not going to try to outsmart him, because, when you listen to him speak and you see people like the Joey G guy at, is it Florida Atlantic? I don't know.
Atlantic. Yes, sir.
Atlantic. But I mean, how am I going to sit here and act like I know more than that guy or have some opinion? I'm going to try to put my own tweak on their system. What I do is just like in the Flexbone world, I could teach Joey Z a lot. Okay. I believe I'm an expert. I have nothing to teach him as far as Feed the Cats and strength conditioning. So long story short, or a long way around, we see these guys that I just believe like, hey, that's 100%. If I could hire Tony Holler tomorrow, I would do it. I wish I had $1 million to do it. If I could hire Joey G tomorrow, I would hire those guys. Like, I just believe, just watch those guys. And to me, it's evident, right? So anyway, when I was at Bethel and had no strength coach, I reached out to Derek Smith, who's a high school strength coach in Arkansas.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's also hilarious. But anyway, I reached out to him and said, hey, man, what would it take for you to do our programming for us? So to alleviate my time of trying to figure out, hey, this is what, sets and reps for this day, all the periodization across the calendar year. So at Bethel College, Coach Smith, who's a Southside Arkansas guy, was doing our programming. Okay, so Smith Performance, I believe, is his company. And so we used Team Builder. Our kids were on Team Builder, and he was programming everything for our kids at Bethel College from in Arkansas, where I forget the name of the town he's in right now. But that's where Southside's the high school, where Kenny Simpson's the head coach there, football.
Yes.
So he was programming strength conditioning for our kids. I went down there, I videoed the weight room and took pictures of it, and I sent him every piece of equipment we had. And Coach Smith was doing our programming. And then me and him would talk once every 3 weeks. But anyway, I told him, I was like, hey, I really would love you to do this. If you can incorporate the Feed the Cat type of training, that's what we would like to do. So we're out there, our kids were doing flying 10s. They were doing the 10-yard bird, all the stuff that the Feed the Cat thing, he was programming that for us to the best of our ability, right? With pretty limited resources. And so he could see our, and we had the vert jump pads, so I bought vert jump mats and the speed timing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to see our kids' results on those things. So he was training our kids, and being our strength coach is as best as possible, right? I'll let them know, like, hey man, you ain't here. We're down here and we're monitoring the kids. And it was crazy though, because our kids, we had a remote strength coach that was significantly, obviously he knows more about strength conditioning than he just does.
Yeah.
Him training us and programming it from Arkansas, having never been on our campus, we had better results than when we were trying to do it. It's crazy, right? So anyway, but we started doing that stuff, and we started seeing the speed gains and the explosiveness, and we won we won back-to-back conference championships, and Coach Smith, the high school strength coach in Arkansas, was doing our programming. And so anyway, I just got tired of trying to pretend to be a strength coach. I'm not. And so that's when we got into it. We started incorporating like no sweat days, like a lot of people do, but that ended up being my favorite day. I love no sweat days. Our kids loved it. We believe we've seen a benefit. And so we do that. And then obviously we brought that over to here at Fringe University. And so yeah, we're doing the best we can. It's actually one of my goals is to I want to go and listen to Coach Holler speak. I just think he's phenomenal, man. I think when you have a resource like that, who truly is an expert at something, man, I want to try to learn everything I can from him. And then Coach Smith out there, if there's any high school coach, I mean, I get nothing. I mean, I have nothing to gain. We have a strength coach now, so we don't have Coach Smith doing our programming anymore, but I would do that in a heartbeat. If you're struggling with strength conditioning, and you maybe programming, and not sure what to do, what a great resource that I'd reach out to him and see if he could help you out, because it was worth everything for us. And it was game changing. We want to, we were top 20 team in the country nationally for 2 years straight, made a playoff game, back-to-back conference championships, and he was doing our programming. So if you can swap, I guess the biggest issue with Feed the Cats is people kind of putting their ego aside and learning from someone else, right? And not letting your own opinions or your own, maybe your own history or your experience kind of jade you in that regard.
Now, you mentioned no sweat days. What does your typical practice look like on a no sweat day?
I want to say it's 45 minutes to an hour. So, now that Coach Reed's come on board, him and our defensive coordinator actually build our practice schedules. I kind of just make sure it's, I kind of give some general guidelines. So Coach Reed will laugh if he listens to this, because him and Coach Kemp, they really nerd out on the practice schedule. But it's 45 minutes to an hour. But what we do is we're able to work on like situations. So we don't do a ton of situation work during the week. We just kind of teach our kids what to do, work on our schemes. But when we go to no sweat day, because we are truly walking, we actually do fundamentals. So we'll do our indie period, but it's a true walk, right? So like board drills for O-line, which is a footwork drill, right? We do the exact same drill work. We just walk it. And it is cool. So instead of trying to hammer a 6-inch step fast all the time, we do a no sweat walking 6-inch step, little stuff like that. Working body posture when you're base blocking people. So we do the start of practice is the same, where you do indie work, you just walk it. We also, 3D coaching is a big part of our program. And so we do a lot of peer coaching at that time. So, what we have seen huge impact is our offensive coaches, we will walk to the 50-yard line and we tell our guys, hey, this is 10 minutes of peer coaching, right? And I've seen Coach Reed do this, and then I stole it from him, right? That's our quarterback coach. Hey, these two you two quarterbacks are going to work together. Quarterback A, tell quarterback B what you're struggling with and let them coach you on it. Quarterback B, tell quarterback A what you're struggling with it, and you take turns doing 5 minutes of coaching each other. And you want to talk about huge impacts on your program, have your kids coach each other. So then you have one player who has admitted, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? So think about when you talk about team culture, if you can create an environment where two players who want the same thing, one can be vulnerable enough to tell this other player, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. I don't understand this, or man, my second step is really slow. I'm working on this position. Whatever it is. And then for the next player to be like, oh yeah, man, let me watch you here and help you and coach you up. But when you want to see really big jumps, and that's what we saw when we became the number one rush team in the country at any level. That it was after we started doing those things, and we really, more than the stats. I guess the reason why I even threw that stat out there is you can be really elite at something and let your kids coach each other. And so we try to no sweat day is a big day for peer coaching, I guess is a long story. The long way around that is peer coaching is a big deal on that day. We do situations because when we look at ourselves and we try to be really hard on ourselves as coaches, what we found was, when do you work on as a Flexbone school, we weren't working on 2-minute drill very often. Well, now we can do that. We can do that on a no sweat day. So we actually no sweat our 2-minute drill. And then these guys are understanding, hey, 3rd and short, this is what we're thinking. Remember the scenario. We're trying to get out of bounds. I get a first down or whatever, right? And we do goal line, all those different zones on the field. And that's been super cool, like, because your kids, in order to do something really fast, once they understand the situation, then it's nothing, right? And so just like getting your field goal team on, we no sweat, hey, here we go. We're going to down and kill the clock. It's 3rd down, 4th down, the field goal team comes out, get yourself up. And when you can walk through that day, and we actually walk through those situations, we've excelled in those. We've won the games on 2-minute drills. And everybody says Flexbone schools can't, it's one of those other lies out there that you can't come back and you 2-minute drill, but we've been elite at it. We've never lost a game in that scenario. We won double overtime games, 2 double overtime games. We won 2 last scoring drive, last drive of the game, go down and score under 2 minutes. And so we think the no sweat thing is help with that as far as concepts and things like that. And so that's kind of what we focus on those days. We do, in order to serve our defense, again, like I said, to the best of our ability, because of the way a defensive week is scheduled out, we do run cards for 10 minutes. So it is no sweat minus the 10 minutes of cards where we run the scout offense for the defense. So, but it's been awesome.
No, coaches, please give Coach a follow on Twitter. I appreciate him coming on. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check our sponsor, CoachPad. And that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Coach, thank you for coming on.
All right, man. I appreciate you, man. Would love people to reach out on Twitter at Coach Harrison FU, and would help out in any way I can.